All right, welcome everyone to our Taste of Training Essentials. And thank you very much for just taking the time out of your busy day to join me. This is part of a bigger series hosted by Javelin, where we are giving a taste of some of our courses to just give you an idea of how the training works and if this course is the right fit for you. So who knows, maybe you'll even learn a thing or two. This webinar is going to cover the topics included in the Essentials course, along with kind of what to expect if you do take the course with us. I'm even going to give a few demonstrations after this little bit of an introduction. And for those demonstrations, we're going to be completing a series of exercises from the actual manual. So we're going to be creating a simple part. We're going to fix some errors. We're going to create a drawing, and we're also going to create an assembly. So we're going to kind of cover a broad range of topics. Let me start by just introducing myself. So my name is Robert Gemmel, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a training and process consultant here at Javelin. What that really means is I'm part of a specialized training team that helps individuals and companies maximize their experience with SOLIDWORKS. So we work with you to identify areas of improvement, whether that's individual training, the software or hardware requirements, or just improving workflows. One of the biggest perks of this role is, of course, just kind of getting to meet everybody and interact with all of you fine folks. And today I'm lucky enough to have people from kind of around the world with us. So that's always exciting. Now, before jumping into the demonstrations, I'd like to kind of clear the air on a couple of things. So first, what is Essentials? So I've talked to many users who assume that Essentials is kind of a beginner or a basic course. And although we do help new users and we kind of accept every level into the program, it isn't really a beginner or basic course. We want to make sure that it's quite a bit more than that. So it really is the essentials, meaning it's perfect for everybody. And it's ideal for people who are recent graduates, self-taught users. I know myself, I was a self-taught user, and when I first took Essentials, I'd already been using the program for quite a while, and I learned so many great tips and tricks. It really kind of surprised me how many workarounds I had for small things. It's also great for people upgrading their skills, or if you're building your resume, this looks really good on a resume. Yeah, the reason it is so useful is that we go quite a bit beyond the tools of the software, and we talk about best practices. We show tips and tricks, and we're really just going to make you a more effective user. So first, I do have a digital manual open, so I'm just going to close this down and we'll take a look at the manual. So this is a digital copy of the manual, and you can get access to this. Now, these manuals you can only get through taking the course. So you have to attend our training in order to be able to get this manual. You will get a hard copy as well. It's pretty hefty, so it's about 600 pages. So I do usually recommend that you get the digital copy, which is through SOLIDWORKS. Excuse me, you'll get an email from them and you'll be able to see this this digital copy you're seeing before your eyes here. So we do have a number of chapters in here. So these are all the different chapters that we go over. And as you can see, it's pretty inclusive, where it starts with the basic sketching, basic part modeling, and then you start getting into a few of the more involved tools, so patterning, ribs, things like that. We go over editing, so the ideal approaches to editing both repairs and design changes. And then we look at a few lessons where we go over kind of ways to make you a more efficient user. So start using configurations, global variables, and equations, things like that. And then, of course, we also go through drawings, and we tend to spend almost the entire last day on assemblies. It's a pretty important aspect there. So instead of doing kind of a single lesson from here for our taste of training today, what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned, do kind of 4 different exercises from the manual. These exercises are going to be relatively easy once you complete the training. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the skills that we would have learned in the training to complete these exercises. So there may be some places where you might say, oh, well, we can use maybe another tool for that. I am just going over what we've learned in here. So if I'm doing it on screen, you will be learning it in this course. So let's take a look at simple part creation first. And I'm actually going to jump right into revolve features. So you can see I'm about halfway through the course at this point. So we have already learned kind of our best practices for sketching, some basic part modeling. We even look at a little bit of a drawing in this, and symmetry, draft, and patterning. So we have all of that under our belt at this point in the course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in, and this is actually a bit of a bonus here. You'll get to see how great this digital version is when we're using this. So if I wanted to check out an exercise here, I can go in and I can just open this up and say, I'd like to jump right to exercise 26. And here's an exercise that we're going to do. So we're going to create this part, this little wheel here, and we're going to put some raised text right on there. And if I zoom in a little bit, we'll be able to see how this exercise works. So it says create this part using dimensions provided, use relations wisely to maintain design intent. And it says it focuses on revolved features. And we can see this is on page 209. So benefit of having a digital version, if you do want to go back and say, you know what, I forgot what Rob taught me about revolved features, I need to go back and read that. Well, that's as simple as a click, and we go back to revolved features. And then you can read through and say, oh, okay, now I remember all the stuff we went through. This is great. I'm ready to do the exercise. I'm just going to go back to the previous view here, and we'll take a look at this. So don't worry, I am going to get into the actual program soon, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the design intent and just the approach to doing this wheel, because this can be a little bit overwhelming at first, where you see a shape like this and you're thinking, wow, where am I going to start with this? So I'm going to help you out with that. In this example, so in this exercise, they actually give us the design intent, which is always useful. We want to be aware of what our design intent is when we're modeling. And in our case here, it says the design intent for this part is as follows. So the part is symmetrical about the axis, and I'll do a little sketch on here. And this is kind of another benefit of our training. We can actually kind of present what we're thinking and show that on screen. So we've got an axis going across here, and unfortunately you have to deal with my terrible sketching here. But yeah, so we've got kind of an axis here, and it's going to be symmetrical on both sides. So both of these shapes should be the same. It's also going to be symmetrical going across this way. So whenever we see that, and of course my lines aren't right in the middle, my apologies for that, but it is what it is. So yeah, so we see that, and what we need to figure out is, okay, so how are we going to make creating this model easy to actually accomplish, so quick and efficient to do, and also easy to go back and edit. So some people will go through and they'll say, okay, so we need to make a circle here, you'll extrude this, and then we'll try and figure out how to cut this out, add more features and everything like that. With what we've learned so far in the course, if you were already on chapter 6, what we're going to realize is we can take advantage of the symmetry, and we can essentially ignore most of this part for the actual creation. and just focus on one section. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to focus on this section. So I'm effectively going to sketch just this outline here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to mirror this across, mirror all of the, or actually I'm going to revolve around this middle axis here to get our final shape. And I'll be using a few other techniques that we've already learned in this course for sketching and dimensioning as we go. So let's see what that's going to look like. I'm going to shrink this down, and I'm actually just going to move this over to the side so I can keep an eye on what we're actually working on, and then you'll be able to see me working through it in SOLIDWORKS here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start a new file. So I'm going to go up and I'm just going to create a new file. We'll work in a part in millimeters. So here we go, we've got that open up. And if I look at this, it says that we've got the front and top views. So here's my front view, here's my top view, and I've got a section view. So here's the section view on the side here. So with that in mind, I'm going to try and kind of mimic what they give us. So if I go to the right plane and start a sketch, what I'm going to do is create those axes in here, and I'm going to do that just with a construction line. And we do like to introduce shortcuts. Again, these are just going to make your life a lot easier as you get more proficient with the program. So things like when you're going to start a line, you might just hit the L on the keyboard and it'll jump you right into the line tool. And then we might say, okay, we want axes going across here. Those are going to be construction lines, and I want them to go across but attached to the origin. Maybe I'll go and I'll grab a midpoint line here, click on the origin, and I'm going to drag. So I'm not doing the click method. I'm actually just dragging this out. And that's just going to give me a line, and I don't have to worry about that line continuing on. I'm going to do the same thing for my vertical. And we can see I am kind of paying attention to those relations you see by my cursor to make sure that I am kind of adding those relations in as I sketch. It'll just make, again, our life a lot easier. So there we go. Now I did say these should be construction. So I'm just going to select the line and I'm going to toggle that to be a construction line. So there we go. And the same thing with this line here. And you'll notice quite a few of these parts, there's a little bit of prep work involved that's going to make it easier down the line. So this is a bit of that prep work we're doing. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to start sketching the actual shape. So for this, again, I'm just going to hit that L key, get my line tool back. And if the axis is running right through here, we see the shape actually starts a little bit above it. So that's where I'm going to start here, a little bit above this line. And I'll just attach it to my vertical axis there. And I'm going to pull this out. You will notice I've got numerical input active on my computer. I don't need to use it, and I'm actually not going to use it in this case, just because I want to show kind of the typical workflow that we're using in here. So I'm going to create that vertical line. I'm going to go up, and the beginning of this sketch is all just to get kind of the basic shape. So the only thing I'm worried about at this point is I don't want to snap to a horizontal or anything like that. So that's why I'm just going up on an angle. I can even exaggerate it like I am now, just to make sure I'm not snapping to those. This one I do want to be a vertical line, so I am making sure to get that. And then we get to a situation like this where we have an arc added in the drawing. Now I'm in my line tool right now. So there's a couple ways that the program has actually made it easy for us to transition into an arc. And they call that, coincidentally, auto transition. So I like to think of the shortcut for this to either stand for auto transition, which is the kind of term for that, or just A for arc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the A key on my keyboard. And let's see, that one is not working out for me right now. Let's bring that in. And the other way to get into that is to go back to the line, and it will bring that arc out for you. And this actually will produce a number of arcs for you. So depending on where you drag your cursor, so I dragged it straight out here, and I can go up and down here. Or I can go back this way and create arcs this way, and even go from the top or the bottom. So I can create a number of different arcs really quickly and easily with this. So now I'm going to just drag that out, and I'm going to come around. Again, I'm paying attention to those inference lines, so that blue dashed line. That's going to let me know that I'm coming around, and that is a half circle now, which means the other line I create here, if I keep this horizontal, as you can see, I'm going to get tangency added in there, which is always nice. Again, we're adding those relations as we go. So I'll click there, and I actually don't even have to close that out. We can drag this up just to make that a little clearer. And that's all I'm concerned about right now, is that shape. So again, this doesn't look too close yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add relations to make sure that we have everything as close as we can. And then speaking of which, I should get a relation in here, and I'm just going to actually, let's attach that right on. So I'm just going to make that coincident. I don't want a little gap or anything, or I don't want to be crossing this line. I want to make sure that's right on that line. And at this point, again, it's a little bit of preference. We can mirror this now. We can start dimensioning now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mirror this across. So I'm going to use my sketch tools here, just select everything, and I'm going to mirror these entities. And there we go. So now I've got kind of that top shape. It's still not very close yet, just because I haven't put in the dimensions. So that's what I'm going to tackle next. And if you were paying attention to my numerical input, you would have noticed that I was actually making this pretty large compared to what they've got here. That's okay. This is going to scale itself for the first dimension I put in, and it's going to scale everything. So I'm still going to maintain this overall shape, but the whole thing is going to be scaled down to, well, a more accurate size. So let's jump in and add some dimensions in here. We can go up here, but we're going to start using our shortcuts a little bit more. So I might hit that S key on the keyboard and grab the dimension tool right from there. That's going to keep my focus more in the graphics area as opposed to having to go up here, look for that, come back down, and then remember what I was trying to do. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tackle this one dimension at a time. So I might start on this top view, and I'm going to add these dimensions. And I'm just going to go down until I have all the dimensions added in. And hopefully that gives me a fully defined sketch. That's kind of the ultimate goal of our sketches. So looking at the top here, and remember, this view is this section down here. So it's also the side here. This is the part I'm looking at right now. So if I'm looking for this diameter of 20, what I actually want is this line here is the equivalent of this line here. So I need to go across my axis to another line, and I haven't even created that line. That line would be about here. So I haven't even created that line. But what I want to do is add that dimension in. So, actually that was for the 20. I'm actually going to add the 40 in first. I like that one more because it's going to scale it a little bit nicer for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this line, and I'm going to add this dimension in. So right now it thinks I want this at a diameter of nearly 100. So when I add this in, I'm going to say, actually, this should only be 40. And it scaled the whole thing down. So if we don't do that, what can happen is these lines might start crossing over each other, and we'll just have to make some adjustments as we add the dimensions. So it's a little easier this way. So I've got that one added in. Next, I want to know the dimension of the smaller end here. So that's going to be this part here. It's 29 from one end to the other. And if I do the same, well, actually, I think I grabbed the line entity that time, but if I try to grab kind of the edge here, so if I grab this arc and I go to this arc, notice it wants to go to the center points, and that's not the dimension I'm looking for. I could kind of hover over this and try to find the midpoint. That's not a best practice because that's not as robust to add a dimension to. So the trick to doing this, to get the dimension we're looking for, is I'm actually going to hold shift as I go over and grab this dimension. So now I'm going to click this dimension while holding shift, and I'm going to go back over here, and again, still holding shift, click on this dimension, and look at that. We get the dimension right from the edge of the arc all the way over to the other edge of the arc. and that's going to be 29. So add that dimension in. All right, so again, still does not look too close to what we're looking for, but it's going to get closer as we add in more dimensions. The next one, let's get that 20 in. I'm going to get all the dimensions from this top view first. So for this one, this is the one where I was talking about. We have that line about where this 40 line is. That's what I'm trying to measure to, but I don't have that yet. We can actually take advantage of a construction line in this case. And this is particular two construction lines. So if I start a line here, click on the line itself, not the vertex of the line, the actual line. Once I cross over that line, you can see it imagines me extending that line beyond. And now I can say, yes, let's make this 20 and add that in. So there we go. Now it's starting to come together. We can see some black lines appearing here. This means that they're fully constrained, which is what we're looking for. There's still a lot of blue, but there's also still a lot of dimensions we need to add in here. So let's go in and continue adding these. We've got another dimension down here, 24, and that should be from this point here. So I'm going to grab that vertex, grab that construction line. It was pre-selected, that's why it's already got it for me. And I can make this 24. And I'm just going to continue on getting our dimensions. It can be easy to grab the easy one, so I know this width. Oh, and that actually brings up a good point here. We want to kind of ideally not be clicking in the middle of a line entity because we might accidentally click the midpoint. It might not make a difference, so it wouldn't have there, but we just want to be aware of that. So I'm going to click right in there to get our dimension here. And that's going to be 5. Next, we've got the same thing here. We know from this line to this line is going to be 4. There we go. And what else do we know here? We've got the angle here. So this is the draft that the hub has, and it's 8 degrees. Now, it can be a little bit tricky to decide how to get that 8 degrees because with our smart dimensions, they'll flip around a little bit. What I always like to do is say, okay, if they're taking a dimension here and here, I'm going to grab those same edges. So the edge on the inside here and the far edge here and put my dimension here. That way I've got kind of exactly what they've got. So coming back in here, that means this line and this line, and we'll make these 8 degrees. And there we go. We can see because we've mirrored this, everything I do on one side is actually happening on the other side as well, so I don't even have to worry about it. And now our sketch is looking quite a bit better. It is not fully defined yet. I can still see some blue lines here. If you're not sure why that is, you can just grab those and move them around. I can see, okay, I don't have a distance across here. I've used all my, my dimensions given here. I've used them all given here. I've still got a diameter of 80 here, and this is going to give me that overall. So once this has been revolved, that's going to be my distance. So I can add that in and say from this far edge, it's going to be the outside of the wheel here to that axis and cross over, and we'll make that 80. Now I've got a nice fully defined sketch, and I can go over to features and I can go right into revolve. I don't even have to exit the sketch. I can just go into revolve. It's going to say, what do we want to revolve that around? And I'm just going to choose that construction line. And there we go. So we were able to produce that entire shape just with that sketch in a fairly easy process. Now the next thing they do, and this is kind of an interesting part about the manual, everything we do, so we teach as instructors in the actual case studies, doesn't necessarily encompass everything. So here they're actually asking you to go out on your own and add this text. So we don't go over this in the case study, but this is kind of another benefit of having us around while you're going through these exercises. If you have questions, we're ready to help out. So this is a good example. A lot of people will say, ooh, text, what am I going to do to get this text aligned correctly? So let's go over that real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start a sketch right on this surface here. And I'm just going to hit Control 8. That's going to go normal to my view. And when I see a bunch of construction lines in here, typically that means I'm going to add those in too. And because they're construction, I'm going to add those in first. That's just kind of a best practice there. So I'm going to hit L to get my line tool. I'm going to say for construction, and I'm going to use the click and drag method again here, just to drag these out. The click and drag means I don't have to worry about lines being added on at the other end here. So I can quickly just drag out a number of lines. What do they have? One more, it looks like, down here. And again, I'm not too concerned about the exact placement yet because we're going to add these dimensions in. I'll also add a circle in, so I can hit that S key, use the circular sketch, and just add that in. And we'll make that 60. And we'll turn that into a construction line as well. So now we have a bunch of construction lines built up. It's still not exactly what we're seeing here. So when they don't have this line, this complete circle here, they've actually got no line over here, no line here, nothing here, and then they've just got these two arcs at the top and bottom. So let's see if we can get there. I'm going to hit that S key, and I'm going to grab the trim tool. This is great because I can use power trim, which means I can just start, I've clicked and I'm dragging, and I can just cut through a line. So that's pretty nice. So I can cut through that. I even get a little red dot if I want to undo that, but I can just cut through there. And I'll cut through that one as well. It looks like it's continued this line on, like I undid that or something, but really that's just identifying that this continues on, and it's actually the same arc here. So that's good. Now, this one actually goes a little bit further than that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove a relation. So it's as simple as hitting delete on the keyboard. And I'm just going to drag that forward a little bit past that line. Now, what they want is they want these horizontally aligned and the same thing down here. And then we're going to add the dimensions. So I'm going to try and get these relations in first, and then we'll start adding these dimensions. So I'm going to grab this line, or this point and this point, make those horizontal. Same thing down here. We've got this point, and I'm going to make these horizontal. There we go. Now let's go in and add these dimensions. So I'm just grabbing those and saying this is going to be 40. And we're going to go in and make this 30. And that looks pretty good for what we're looking for. Now we're just going to add that text in. And I'm just going to follow along with what the manual is telling me. So I can go up, grab the sketching. I'm going to choose an arc. Whatever I want to type in, I'm going to type in here. So I'll say designed using. Now this doesn't look right again, but don't worry, we're going to change all that. We've got all the control down here that we need. So first, it says we want the font to be Courier New at 11. So I'm just going to use my own font. So I can uncheck the document font to get in here. And let's go with Courier New. I'm going to switch to point, and we'll drop that down to 11. So now I've got the right font in there. It's still upside down, so I'll flip it to the other side there. Now it's backwards. I'll flip that around. We're really close now. All we need to do is align that, and we'll do that with a center line. All right, so we're all set there. Same thing. I'm going to repeat this, and I'm still in that same sketch. I'm going to repeat that. Same idea. So grab the line there, and we're going to write SOLIDWORKS. And we're going to use our own font. So I'm going to switch that and go in with, looks like Arial. And this one's going to be a bit bigger, up to 20. I'm going to fully justify this. And let's make sure we get that on the right side. So let's flip that over. It's backwards. There we go. So now we have all of our text added in nice and easily. Let's go in and extrude that. Again, I can just go straight into the extrude from the sketch. It has to think for a bit. It looks like it hasn't really done anything. If I just rotate it around, we can see it is giving me a preview of extruding out. And what do they want? They want it to come out to a depth of 1 and with 1 degree of draft. So it's going to come out 1 millimeter. and we're going to add draft. So I'm going to click to add draft, and 1 degree looks good. And I can say okay. And there we go. There's a relatively complicated little part that we were able to do pretty easily, with just 2 features and some basic sketching and part modeling skills. And then we can go ahead and save that. I typically will make a little folder for all my essentials, and we'll call this wheel. So there's kind of a quick breakdown of the first exercise in the 6th chapter that we would take a look at. So I'm going to jump in. We don't have a lot of time together, so I've got about half an hour more. So we're going to jump into the other 3 exercises right away. So that was kind of some simple part modeling. Let's take a look at some editing. So I'm going to open up our editing repairs lesson, and we'll go down and we'll open up our exercise number 38. This is errors 1. So here we go. And let's see what this one's asking us. So if I zoom in a bit, we'll be able to see this a little bit better. What it's asking for is just to make sure that we have this part ready. We can see before it's going to be pretty rough. We're going to get a lot of errors and warnings, and we want to fix this up. So let's see what happens. I'll close out of this. You'll notice I've got everything in my library right now, all the exercise files here. This is something that we'll go over also in the Essentials course, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and has quick access to this. I believe this one's going to be lesson 8, and we can go into our exercises. And is it 8 that we're in here? Let me just check real quick. It is lesson 8. So where's my exercises? There it is there. So here's errors 1. And open this up, and we'll see what we get. So I get this box here. This is a great little tool here that's going to tell you a lot about what's happening here. So it's going to give me kind of what the issue is, whether it's an error or a warning. So whether it's kind of a critical error where it can't even rebuild, or a warning where something's amiss, but we can fix that nice and easily. Actually, we're going to be able to fix all of this easily, but there we go. It's also going to tell us where the issue is. So we've got a number of features here, and then it's going to say what exactly the problem is. I'm going to go ahead and close this because there's actually other ways we can do that. If I want, let me unpin this. Oh, sorry, I just pinned that. So I'm just going to click in the graphics area to get rid of that so we can see a little bit more. So here's kind of our ketchup and mustard here. This is not what we want to see, so we're going to try and fix that. First thing we can do is another little shortcut. I can hit Control-T, and what that's going to do, well, it opens this up just because there was a rebuild that happened. But what that does is it kind of spreads out my tree here. So you can see now my sketches are outside of the features that are using them. And this is super valuable when trying to fix and edit and modify, because we know that the sketches are actually created first. So even though it says that this base plate has the error, if we look at what it says, it actually says the sketch cannot be used. So I say, oh, okay, well, let's go back to that sketch and let's edit that sketch and see what's going on. Right away, we can see that this is an underdefined sketch, but it might not be obvious why. One of the first things you'll try to do is wonder, well, wait a second, when we scaled, is there a random little line entity way off in the distance that we forgot about? And we can go ahead and hit that F key for fit to screen, or do a double click on the scroll wheel, and we can fit to screen. If there was some little line way off in the distance, this would shrink right down and it would try and capture all of that in our screen. So it kept just this. So I'm pretty confident the issue is within what we're seeing right here. Now I can go to a normal view. So I'm going to hit Control-8, just so I'm looking at this straight on. And let's see what's going on. So I see a little relation up here, and there is actually a line up here. Now, if this was really hard to see, maybe that's a little tiny line up here, we might not see that right away. So one of the things we learn is to check the sketch. And something like check the sketch, you might not remember exactly where that tool is housed up here. So if you remember our shortcut key, we can just start typing in there. So I'm going to start typing check, and look at that. It actually populates up here, and now I can just go up here and click on that. So now I can check my sketch and see what's happening. It's just warning me that there's a problem. We knew that. That's why we're actually looking at this. So I'm going to say OK. And now we get a little magnifying glass here, so I can zoom right in, zoom out, just in this little circular field here, and I can see what the issue is. And it actually tells me right here, contour entities overlap. So now I'm going to say, oh, okay, of course that's what's going on. Now, if you're familiar with the selection, I can go one way, and look at that. With the green selection, I selected everything that selection went over. If I go the other way, so from left to right, it's not green this time, it's blue. And that is actually a little bit different. What it's going to do now is it's only going to select what's completely in there. So I grab that line. Now I can just hit delete on the keyboard, and I've gotten rid of that, and this is a fully defined sketch now. So we fix that really easily. I can say OK. And at this point, we get this pop-up. Quite often you'll say, of course I want to, let's continue and ignore this. Then it's going to have to rebuild everything. You're going to see all these errors and warnings. Another approach is to hit stop and repair. Cool thing about that is it brings the rollback bar back to where the next problem is. And it says there's a problem with the sketch here. So I'm going to say, great, let's see what's going on with that sketch. I'm going to edit this. And again, let's go normal to Control 8. So here's our awful mustard color here. It's a problem with the dimension. How do we fix that? We don't want to just delete this and recreate it. If we can avoid that, we want to just make changes to it. So I'm going to click on that dimension. Notice I get this little red square down here. This is actually a little handle where I can grab this and drag it around. Now it's telling me I can't really move that around. But once I get over a line, now it says, oh, you want to snap that here? And there we go. We've just moved that dimension up here, and we're all set now. So I didn't have to delete anything. I just grabbed that red dot and moved it along, and we're all set. I'm going to say OK there. Now at this point, the rollback bar is still here. I could click and drag this down. That's going to be the same as before when we said we didn't want to continue and ignore. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right click and roll to end. Now we get this option again where I can say, yes, I want to stop and repair. It's going to bring me to the next problem. This just saves a little bit of computing because it doesn't have to compute all these errors and warnings each time. This is another problem with the sketch we're going to see. So I'm going to jump right into that sketch and see what's happening. Let's go normal 2. And it looks like the same idea. This line entity is supposed to be collinear, but it doesn't know what it's collinear for. And there's my magic red box again. I'm going to click on that and say, maybe it's this edge here that we should be attached to. And now we fix that. So again, we didn't delete that collinear relationship. I just repositioned it. And now we're all set. I can say OK, and we'll do the same process. So a little bit repetitive here, but it's going to save some time in the end. So I'm going to say roll to end, stop and repair. And here we go. So we've got a rib fillet. This time, look at this. We've got a preview here. So a little eyeball here. What that's going to do is I can click on that, and it's going to show where the issue is. So here's a yellow highlight pointing that the problem is right here. So this is the fillet that we're worried about. I also have a feature expert. If I click on that, the computer is going to attempt to fix this for me. What that typically means is it's going to attempt to reorder the fillets for us to help us out. In this case, it wasn't able to repair this. So I wonder why it wasn't able to repair this for us. Let's take a look at this rib fillet a little closer. So I'm going to edit the feature. And everything looks good. It wants the fillet on these two edges. Fine, we've got a preview. Now we don't see a preview, that's a problem. Fillet parameters, here's the size of the fillet, it's 55. Now that might be a red flag for you if you've been paying attention to the size of this. If not, we can always go back and say, well, what is it supposed to be? And in here they actually say a radius of 5. So this error is actually just a typo. So the designer just typed 55 by accident. We should switch that back to 5. And let's see what that does for us. Let's roll to end. Whoops, roll to end. And there we go. We fixed our part now. And we're back to where we should be. And we didn't have to delete anything in there. We just reassociated everything. And then we can go ahead and save this with no errors, and we're all set. Awesome. So now let's take a look at another one. And I know we're going through this a little bit quickly. You can always review this at a later time and have a look. But these are kind of the things that we'll go over in Essentials. So next, let's take a look at a drawing here. So let's go in and take a look at the first drawing exercise. They have detail and sections. So this one, what do we have here? Let's zoom in. And this one, it looks like we want to add some remove sections, some section views, detail views. We're going to copy some views. We're going to add dimension text in there. So we're going to do quite a bit here. This is our end goal for the first sheet. Then we're going to have another sheet that looks something like this. So let's see if we can quickly get into that. All right, so first let's get this part open. They've given us a part here. It's called details and sections, and we'll see how quickly and easily we can make a pretty well done drawing here. So I'm going to go back into my files. This one is lesson 12, I believe, and exercises, and here it is right here. So here we've got this nice wrench, and I want to make a drawing for this. Well, I can quickly do that by just going in and saying make a drawing from the part assembly. You would have learned earlier on in the course that everything's fully associative, and this is a quick way to go from one part into another file type. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say OK to A size. Yes, that looks good. And it took a moment to open that up, but there we go. So we've got this, and it's automatically opened up our view palette here. So another option we've got here. And notice I've got auto start projected view selected. So by default, that's going to be on. But when I look at here, these are actually both top views. So although it looks like I might be doing a projected view here, these aren't projected. They're both top. So I'm going to make sure I grab a top view, drag that in, and just drop it maybe right about there. Now I want another top view in there. Oh, actually it wants to project. I'm just going to hit escape to get out of that, to say no, I don't want to project this. Now I can grab that border there and just hit Control C, Control V on my keyboard, and there's my other top view. So real quickly I was able to get those. Now I could go in here and try and line those up. That looks fairly close, but it's not quite aligned. So what I can do is I can just right click in one of these boxes here, and I can check for alignment, and I can say, you know what, I want to get these vertically aligned according to their origins. My cursor feedback changes and it says, you've got this one selected, what do you want to align it to? And I'm going to say this one. We saw a little movement there, and now these are aligned. So if I go and move one, they both move together. That's going to be a lot nicer for this drawing. So my approach looking at this, and actually I'll zoom in on this a little bit for you. So let's see what we're after. Here we go. So my approach here is going to be, I'm going to get all of these different views in first. Then I'm going to add all of the dimensions in, okay? So first thing we're going to do, we can always go up to drawing and grab views from up here. So I'll do that for this first one. I'll grab the remove section. This is where we can choose the edges, and it's going to grab kind of an infinitely thin slice of this profile wherever we choose. So I'm going to choose, say, right in here, and I'll click to place that profile, the remove section, and there it is. So it's a bit of a cross shape in there. And we've got that. I'm going to say OK. Next thing, we've got a section view. This time we'll take advantage of that shortcut key again. So I'm going to hit that S key, go to my views, there's a little drop down there, and I can grab that section view. I'm just going to pop that right in. I can lock it right on there. I always leave auto start unselected because I like having the options of creating kind of a notch where we need, and we can see the little numbers on there are going to tell you exactly the process of creating each of those 3 notches. In this case, I don't need one, so I'm just going to say, nope, I'm happy with that. And there we go. I can drag this out and say, there's our section view. Now, if we look over here, it's actually supposed to be going the other direction. I can just flip the direction nice and easily. And there we go, that looks a little bit better. Actually, it also has A here in this drawing. They actually have stops written. So let's change that as well. And we could change this in the graphics area as well. It's up to you. There we go. Now this overlaps a little bit. That's not necessarily the nicest. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab stops and I'm just going to drag it out a little bit so it's not interfering. There we go. Maybe we want our views back a little bit there. I got a little close to my section view here. All right, so now we've got 2 views down, 2 more to go, and these are simple projected views. So again, I can hit that S key, go to my views, and find projected view. Let's go projected from here, and I'm just going to add in a view here and a view here. So now I'm happy with all of my views. What I'm going to do now is add in those dimensions. And I'll focus in on kind of one area at a time for these just to make my life a little easier. The selections, the further you zoom out, some of these close lines will get really close together. Actually, in the drawing, you can see that how they look like one thick line. If you simply zoom in, those lines are going to spread out a little bit and you'll see those. So I'm going to go in and I'll go to annotations and we'll just grab dimension. I'm just going to add smart dimensions to these. So I want to go from this line to, let's grab this line, and I'm going to add that dimension right over here. Now they've got this as a reference dimension, so I'm going to open up my view palette. I can do that by just hovering over that, and I can type that in, reference, and there we go. And I can continue on with other dimensions, so I want to go from here to here, and I can use that rapid dimension to just pop that dimension out. Same thing, I need the radius here. I'm just going to click that, take advantage of my rapid dimensioning, and there we go. Now right away, one thing I'm noticing here, I've got 2 decimal points here. They don't have any here. If it was only a couple, I might just change them right here, but it looks like all of them, almost all. So there's one that goes to 2 decimals, all the others have no decimals. So what I'm going to do, I need to drag this out a little bit so I can see my gear. I'm going to go to System Options. Check the document properties, which is going to be specific to the file we've got open. Go to dimensions, and let's just change that precision to say we don't want any decimals. And it's as easy as that. We don't have decimals here. One other thing you may notice here is we've got this weird kind of, I don't know, symbol here. It almost looks like this is supposed to be 110 millimeters. It's actually a little a square symbol that we've got there. And if I click on this dimension, what I can see down here is a number of easy symbols we can add. We can even add more, but these are kind of the common ones, and there's square right there. If I want to add it after the 11, I'm just going to bring my cursor to after the dimension code there. That's bringing in the dimension. And I'm going to add in that square. It's as easy as that, so nice and simple. And there we've got our dimensions on there. Let's move along here to our stops section view. Same thing. Let's grab our dimension. So I'm just hitting that S key, grab dimension, and we're going to go in here and use rapid dimensioning. Same thing here. We can use rapid dimension. Now, it might not be perfect all the time. In this case, this is crossing over. It's a little bit messy. I can easily just drag that up, maybe even drag this down. It's still going to be attached to that view, so if that moved later on, that would still follow. And moving on, let's get a dimension down here. And there we go. And again, I just want to mention, I am going through this relatively quickly. If we were, oh, and I've got another one down here. I'll delete that after. In the course, don't worry, it's not nearly at this pace, but this is just kind of a quick demo to show what you are going to be learning. Okay, so don't worry about that. We go at a great pace, and we actually encourage people to stop us if we go over something and you missed it, or you want to see it repeated. You can just say, "Hey, Rob, hold on a second. Can you repeat that last step?" And then we'd go back and repeat that for you. So it is based on your own pace. I just want to point that out. All right, so let's continue on with these dimensions. And there we go there. We've got that one in. Let's grab a radius in here. This one maybe I'll just drag and place, and won't even use the rapid dimensioning. Same thing here. Pull that one out, and we need a 13 in here. There we go. So that looks pretty good. Now they've added some more fun stuff to these dimensions. This one here's got the decimal points. It shouldn't actually be 14. How do we get that? Select that dimension. We can affect a single dimension right in here. So I can just say, actually, this one we do want it to 2 decimal points. And also we've got some writing under these. So I can click on here, open up my dimension palette. This is essentially a preview of what the dimension is going to look like. So we see an R before the numerical value, just like we see there. So if I want spherical radius written below, I'm just going to go down there and write that. So here we go, spherical radius. And I'm going to say OK to that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And there's my view palette. Now, every once in a while, you'll notice that view palette is shy, so it disappears on you. When you're in a part file and you do that, you have to go back to where it was and hit Control to bring back that. In a drawing, it's great because you don't even have to be close. I can be down here and be like, oh, I did want to use that numerical or the view palette. Hit Control down here, and there it's right here for us. So I'll still bring that in, spherical radius. And there we go. Now these are kind of pointing, this one looks good. This one here, it actually points the other side. That's just depending on where you place that. So I can just drag it over and we're all set. We're pretty close. It looks like I need a few more dimensions in here. Let me grab that dimension tool again and we'll just quickly add these in. Add that dimension in there. From center to center of these circles, we can add them in. Oh, I moved too quickly for my rapid dimensioning there. And from this end to the other end, we'll bring in that dimension as well. And then we do have the center marks on all of these. So let's add those in quickly. This is nice and easy. We're just going to go and click on the circles here. And we can very quickly and easily add in all the center marks. Just like so. And that's that first sheet. Now, for the other sheet, they do a couple things. So I'm not going to add all the dimensions, but I'm going to get the views set up for you on this one. And then we'll jump into the assemblies exercise. I don't want to take too much of your time. Oh, let's get rid of this one as well. So I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard to get rid of that view that we don't want. And to get another sheet, simply go down to the bottom here, add another sheet. Sometimes you'll get that it can't be located. That just means we have to tell the program what sheet we want. And I'll stick to ANSI landscape. All right, so here we go. We've got our sheet here. I'm going to go back to our view palette. And they say this is the front view, so I'll drag that one in first. The other two views are projected. So I'm going to bring in the front view. Come down here. This is going to give me a projected view of that. We can see that these are slightly different. And then I'm going to hit escape, grab this view, hit the escape, and I'm going to go back into projected view again so I can project again. So it's almost as if we were rotating around our part as we go down. So now I have the correct views here. The other thing I want to point out before I jump into the next one is, notice we see hidden lines on these two views, but not this view. Well, all we have to do is click on a view, and we've got a lot of control we can do over in the property manager. And I can actually click multiple views. So I'm going to hold control. I'll grab both of these views, and I'll say, I want to see the hidden lines in these two views. And there we go, we've got our hidden lines. At that point, it's just like we were doing before, just adding those dimensions in, nice and simple. So yeah, just in the interest of time, I'll jump into the assemblies exercise, and we'll take a look at a simple exercise there. So I'm going to close out of this one. It'll prompt me to save. Let's go ahead and save that just for the fun of it. I've got a folder for it anyways. So I'll go to my desktop, Essentials, and we'll save that drawing right in there. All right, there's our wrench. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And let's find ourselves an assemblies exercise to work on. Again, that might seem a little overwhelming. If you're new to this, don't worry. Everything would be covered before you get to these exercises. So let's go in, let's start in the beginning of the assembly, so where we're working with creating the assembly. And let's go right over to exercise 56, the grinder here, and see what we can do with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this fun little assembly, and what's going to happen, actually I'll show you what that will look like. This is actually another cool thing about the course. The files, they actually give you completed examples here. So I can go and say, oh, I'm still in the drawing. Go to exercises and say, what do the completed exercises look like? Here's the grinder, and let's open that up. So then you can get an idea of what it should look like and how it should work. So this is the assembly we want to create. All right, so let's see if we can quickly do that. We're going to be a few minutes past 1 hour, but as long as you bear with me another 5 or 10 minutes, we'll be able to get through this assembly. And hopefully you'll be able to pick up some tricks like SmartMates along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and close that one, and we'll open up the base. So I'll go back to my normal exercise, and we'll go into, what do I want? The grinder, and let's open up that base. So here's the base here. What we're going to do is we're just going to bring this into an assembly. So again, quick and easy, make assembly from part, and we've got ourselves an assembly. It's going to prompt us. So that should be fine. It's going to prompt us with this option here where I can just bring in the base. It knows I want to bring this in just because it's currently open in SOLIDWORKS right now. That's what it determines should be in this window. If it wasn't, we could browse and search for it. But I'm going to say OK. I could click here and just bring it in, but that's not going to give me any idea of where it is in space. So I like to hit the green arrow, and it locks it in. So the origin of this base is now at the origin of the assembly. You can see when I hover over it, there it is right in the middle there. And for the base, same idea. Okay, so same place. Now we've got this brought in. What we need to do now is bring in the sliders. So I'm just going to bring in one first, and I'm going to use the assembly tab here, insert components, and I'm going to do a search. I'm going to track down that little slider. The reason I'm using insert components, you're going to see in just a second, great little option is going to appear with this. So before I click to place it, look at this little pop-up here. I can now choose to rotate this around so that it's a little bit closer to what I need. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I want to rotate it around here, and I can look at my triad down here. Looks like I want to go around the y-axis. So we'll go to my y-axis. It's going to rotate this 90 degrees. And there's my rotation. And now it looks like it can line up pretty well for this. And I'll just click to place it. There we go. We can see it's right through here. This is common with an assembly. The assembly doesn't care about physics at this point, so it just allows us to place it there. The mates are what are going to help us out here. And I'm going to use the control click method. So I've selected that face. I'm going to hold control, select this face, and it gives me the options here right near my cursor. So I don't even have to go up to the mates tool. I can just say, yes, let's make that coincident. Not only that, look at this. I can go and grab a number of surfaces. So these two, I'm just holding control to get these extra selections. So once I get 4 selections, there's only one option for mates that it's suggesting, and it says, if you want, we can make that a width mate. What that's going to do is it's going to put these 2 pieces right in line with each other. So now that's right in the middle, and that should slide freely in and out there. So that's great. So we've got our first slider in. Let's go ahead and bring in the next one in. I'm just going to get the other one by control dragging that part out. Nice and simple, right? So now I've got 2 sliders here. I want to rotate this around. The only way to get that little pop-up that we saw is using insert components, but I didn't use that to get this one in. So how can I turn that so it's lined up? Well, if you do a different method like I just did, we can always do a right click and just move with a triad. You get this fancy handle where we can just drag this however we want. So I can drag it around, move it up and down, side to side, and I can spin it around. If I want, I can even lock to these different degrees and snap it in. We don't have to be exact, but we can get it pretty close. Now that's going to be a lot easier on SOLIDWORKS to find those mates. And we'll do the same process here. So I'm just going to hold control, get that second surface selected, make that coincident, and then let's get all of our surfaces selected. So this one, this one, this one, and this one. There's our width, and it lines it up. And now we can see this one here is also aligned in there. All right, so we've got a good start to this. So this will save as our grinder. So I'm going to save as. I'll just rebuild that just because I was moving around those little pieces. And we'll call this grinder. Of course, in our folder. All right, we're all set there. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another assembly to create the handle because it's got a number of components. And what that's going to do is it's going to increase the performance here. So it's going to make this run a little bit smoother because when it brings that other assembly in, it's going to treat that as if it was a part. So it's not going to have to solve for all the mates we use in this. Again, they'll go in depth in that, into that in the course, but that's the process of why we're doing that right now. So again, we can go in and I'm going to pin this open, and I'm going to open up the handle. The reason I'm pinning this is because after I open this handle, I want to be able to drag a few more things in here. And actually, I don't want to do it to the part file. I want to make this assembly first. So again, just make an assembly from that part. Nice and simple. And here, so now I've got 3 things open right now, but it's taking what we left from the handle, and I'm going to say, yes, that's what I want to bring in. All right, so if we look at this, there's 4 more components we want in here. And that's why I pinned this, so I can just drag these in now. So here's a knob. It's asking if I want to drag more, and I'm just going to hit escape to say, no, I'm happy with 1. And my escape is not working right now, so I'm just going to say, let's close out of that. And what I'm going to do is grab this truss head and drag it in. This one's got a configuration. That's what this is here. Again, you'll be learning about these earlier on in the course, but this is just allowing us to choose which specific one we want. And it looks like we want 832 5-inch long, this one that we've got selected. So I'm going to say OK. Again, I only want 1. I'll hit escape. It worked for me that time, which is good. And we've got that. Next, we'll use the truss head screw. drag that. Oh, no, we want the machine screw. Sorry about that. So I'm going to drag in the machine screw. Same idea, a lot of configurations for this. We want the 440 and 0.625. So I'm going to say OK to that. In this case, we actually do want more than one. I could do that fancy control drag I did earlier, but I'm just going to drop this in. Now hit escape, because that's all we need. These are all the components I need for this assembly. So I'm going to unpin this. Now we're going to have some fun with this. So we've been adding mates by selecting a surface, holding control, selecting the other surface, and then selecting the mate. We can also use smart mates. The way smart mates work are we grab a selection. So typically you're going to grab a face and you're going to, so if I was doing that with a face, I would grab this face, hit Alt on the keyboard. I'm going to get that paper clip. What that allows me to do is as I go over other pieces here, it's going to try and snap to them and add smart mates. So there it wants to make those two concentric. Now, even cooler than that, if I grab a circular edge, what it's doing is the program realizes, hey, you're on a surface here. You've also got a cylinder here. Maybe we can add two mates at once. So I'm going to grab that. And I'm going to hit Alt. So I got the paper clip. That's what signifies that this is going to be a smart mate. Now what I'm actually doing in this case, because I want this on the other side, is I'm going to use my middle finger to click and rotate my view. So you have to be a little bit flexible with your fingers here. And then now we're looking at this and I can hover over that edge here and it's going to do a pagan hole mate. And if we look at that, it's actually doing two mates. So it took that surface, added it to this surface or made it concentric or coincident to this surface and took the two cylinders and made them concentric. So with that method, we can actually do quite a few mates pretty quickly. So we need another 6 mates. Watch how quickly we can do this. I grab this edge, hit Alt until I see that paper clip and drop that in. Same thing here. I'm going to grab this edge. I'm going to do that little, well, I'll get the mate going first. I'm going to do the middle finger to rotate that around and drop that right in. Finally, we want this one to hold that knob on. Grab that edge, Alt, and snap it in. We just added 8 mates with just a few quick moves. And we've got our assembly. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to cancel that. I went to save all by accident there. Save as. Let's rebuild this. And we call this crank. So I'm going to go back to my desktop where I saved the other one. And I'm going to call this crank. And save. All right, so now what do we do? Let's close this. And we'll close this. And we're back to our other assembly, but we want this new assembly in there. Well, if I know where I saved it, I can track it down in Windows. So I can actually go in here and say, let's go to my desktop, to Essentials. Here's my crank assembly. I can just drag it actually right into the program. So there we go, it's in here. I'll close that. And I've got a sub-assembly within that other assembly. And again, we're just gonna add a few mates to get this attached. So I can grab this. Let's continue using those smart mates. So I'm going to hit Alt and let's see if we can snap that in. So there's one. I'm going to grab this cylinder, hit Alt. It's trying to snap to other things. I want to wait till I see my cursor feedback and there we go. That's going to be added in there. And finally, we'll grab this surface and I'll do my fancy little trick. Whoops, I lost it there. I clicked a few things at once. I'll grab that. So I can move that, hit Alt. Now I'm going to rotate around and snap that right on top. All right, so let's have a look at how this is working now. Rotate this around and look at that. We've got our fancy grinder. where it rotates around. And that kind of brings us to the end of the demos that we've done. Again, I know those were a little bit quick, but there is a lot of information that is covered in Essentials, and I wanted that to kind of come across in this webinar. So hopefully you enjoyed that, maybe learned a thing or two, and yeah, hopefully you're interested in taking Essentials, and maybe I'll see you around. If you do have any questions, we do have a Q&A option there. So if you do have any questions, feel free to type those in, and we'll get back to you when we get a chance. So right after this this webinar closes down. So thank you very much again for spending some time with me to learn a little bit about SOLIDWORKS and the courses that we offer, or this particular course that we offer. Yeah, so enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you again.